Arlington, Texas, a city known for its lively neighborhoods, Friday night football, and families who take pride in their roots. On the surface, it's a place where the American dream thrives. But one summer evening, a tragedy unfolded in a quiet suburban backyard, sending shockwaves through the community and leaving everyone grasping for answers. This wasn't just a story of loss, it was a story that would expose a betrayal so profound it tore a family apart forever. The Freeman family was the picture of stability. Jamal Freeman, a devoted husband, a doting father, and a man admired by his friends and neighbors, seemed to have it all. His wife Tanya was the backbone of their home, raising their two young children while working tirelessly as a nurse. And then there was Marcus Freeman, Jamal's father, a man who had always been seen as a pillar of strength in the family, offering wisdom and guidance at every turn. But on the night of July 14th, everything changed. It was a warm evening when Tanya Freeman made a frantic call to 911. Her voice was trembling, panic-stricken. She had found her husband, Jamal, lying motionless in their backyard. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a tragic accident, a man collapsing under the strain of a long day in the Texas heat. But as paramedics arrived and police began their routine investigation, it quickly became clear that Jamal's death was no accident. The bruises on his arms, the overturned patio chair, the faint streaks of blood on the stone path, each detail whispered a story that no one wanted to hear. What began as a simple inquiry into a family tragedy would soon unravel into a tale that no one could have anticipated. A father's love, a son's trust, and a wife's loyalty, three sacred bonds, would be tested in ways unimaginable, and at the center of it all was a secret so forbidden, so devastating, it would shatter the very foundation of the Freeman family. Jamal's death wasn't just the result of an argument gone too far or a random act of violence. It was the culmination of months of lies, hidden desires, and choices that no one dared to confront. As detectives dug deeper, they unearthed a secret relationship that would leave everyone asking the same question. How could this happen? How could a father, a man meant to protect and guide, betray his own blood most unimaginably? The investigation would uncover text messages, witness testimonies, and surveillance footage that painted a picture of betrayal and obsession. And when the truth finally came to light, it was more shocking than anyone could have ever expected. This is the story of Jamal Freeman, a man whose life was taken by the very person he trusted the most. A story of forbidden desire, betrayal, and the devastating cost of secrets kept hidden for far too long. Stay with us as we walk through every twist and turn of this tragic tale. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Because what you're about to hear is a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty, love, and the ties that bind a family together. Arlington, Texas, a sprawling city filled with suburban charm and southern hospitality. It's the kind of place where life hums along at a steady rhythm. The streets are lined with tidy lawns and white picket fences. Children's laughter echoes from backyards, and neighbors greet each other with friendly waves. In neighborhoods like these, families are the heartbeat of the community. And for the Freeman family, this was no exception. Jamal Freeman was the type of man people admired. At 35, he was a proud father of two young children, a dedicated husband, and a reliable friend to anyone in need. His easy smile and dependable nature made him a cornerstone in his neighborhood. Whether it was fixing a neighbor's fence or volunteering at his kids' school events, Jamal was always there, a man who seemed to embody everything good about family and community. Jamal's wife, Tanya Freeman, was no less beloved. At 32, she juggled the demands of being a mother and a full-time nurse with grace and warmth. Known for her kind heart and sharp wit, Tanya was the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking in. Together, Jamal and Tanya seemed to have built a life that many envied, a partnership rooted in love, respect, and shared dreams. At the conference table, Tanya answered questions about antidepressants, their physical and mental health. And then there was Marcus Freeman, Jamal's father. At 55, Marcus was a retired truck driver, a man whose life had been defined by hard work and sacrifice. He was a towering figure in the family, both literally and figuratively. Marcus had a way of commanding attention without saying much, a quiet authority that made people listen when he spoke. To Jamal, Marcus wasn't just a father, he was a mentor, a guide, the man who had taught him everything about being a husband and father. Finally, there was Keisha Freeman, Jamal's wife of 6 years. At 29, Keisha was strikingly beautiful, with a magnetic personality that drew people in. But beneath her charm lay a complicated past, one she rarely spoke about. While she seemed to fit seamlessly into the Freeman family, there were whispers among neighbors that Keisha's life before Jamal wasn't as picture-perfect as it appeared. Still, Jamal loved her fiercely, and together they built a life that seemed solid, if not unshakable. The Freeman family lived in a modest home in the suburbs of Arlington. It wasn't extravagant, but it was theirs. A cozy, single-story house with a neatly trimmed lawn and a small garden that Tanya took pride in. The backyard, with its weathered wooden patio and string lights, was where the family spent countless evenings, grilling, laughing, and sharing stories. It was a place of comfort, a sanctuary from the outside world. The neighborhood itself was just as idyllic, quiet streets where children played freely, neighbors exchanged pleasantries, and life moved at a peaceful pace. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. Cookouts were a regular occurrence, and the Freemans were often at the center of it all, a family that seemed to have everything figured out. But even in the most serene settings, life has a way of surprising us. Behind closed doors, every family has its struggles, its moments of tension. And for the Freemans, those moments would soon take a turn that no one could have anticipated. The laughter that once filled their backyard would be replaced by whispers of betrayal. The trust that held their family together would begin to fracture. One secret at a time. What was it about this family that seemed so perfect, yet so fragile? How could a bond as strong as the one between a father and son crumble so completely? The answers lay within the walls of that modest home in Arlington, Texas, a home that would soon become the backdrop for a tragedy no one could have imagined. The Freemans were a family like any other, living in a neighborhood like so many others. But what happened within their home would shock their community to its core and leave a legacy of questions that may never fully be answered. This is where the story begins. It was a warm summer evening in July, the kind of night when the Texas heat lingers long after the sun goes down. The Freeman household had been quiet that day. Tanya Freeman had spent the evening getting the kids ready for bed, their laughter fading into the hum of the air conditioner. Jamal, as he often did, had gone out to the backyard to unwind, a small ritual in a long day of responsibilities. But what should have been a routine evening took a devastating turn. At 9:47 p.m., a frantic 911 call shattered the stillness of the night. Tanya's voice was trembling, nearly incoherent as she begged for help. Her husband, Jamal, was lying motionless on the patio, his body slumped against the wooden railing. "Please hurry," she cried. "He's not breathing." Paramedics arrived within minutes, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over the neatly trimmed lawn. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, their faces etched with concern and curiosity. Tanya stood in the doorway, clutching her chest as paramedics worked tirelessly to revive her husband. But it was too late. Jamal Freeman, a man in the prime of his life, was pronounced dead at the scene. At first glance, it seemed like a tragic medical emergency. The summer heat in Texas is unforgiving, and the initial assumption was heat stroke or perhaps a sudden heart attack. But as investigators began to survey the scene, small details began to raise questions, details that couldn't be ignored. Jamal's arms bore faint bruises as though he'd been in a struggle. A chair on the patio was tipped over, its legs tangled in a small pile of dirt where a flower pot had shattered. The marks on the ground, scuff marks that broke the otherwise smooth pattern of the patio stones, hinted at something more than a simple collapse. To the trained eyes of the detectives on the scene, the backyard wasn't just a place where a man had died. It was a puzzle, and every piece told a story. The officers questioned Tanya, whose tear-streaked face painted a picture of heartbreak. She explained that Jamal had gone outside to water the plants, a habit of his on warm evenings. She had been inside folding laundry when she realized he hadn't come back in. When she went to check on him, she found him lying there, unresponsive. It was a simple, heartbreaking account. But something about it didn't sit right with the investigators. Forensic experts combed through the backyard as the hours ticked by. They examined the overturned chair, the broken flower pot, and the faint streaks of blood on the stone pathway leading to the patio. None of it added up to the narrative of a man simply collapsing. Then there were the bruises. Faint, yes, but unmistakable. They weren't the kind of marks left by an accidental fall. They told a different story, one of resistance and force. The medical examiner's initial findings added another layer of intrigue. Jamal's injuries weren't consistent with heat stroke or a heart attack. There were signs of blunt force trauma, a detail that couldn't be explained by the story Tanya had given. The questions began to pile up. What had really happened in that backyard? And who, if anyone, had been there with Jamal in his final moments? As the night wore on, officers canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors and asking questions. A neighbor 2 houses down reported hearing voices earlier in the evening, 2 men arguing, though the words were muffled. Another neighbor mentioned seeing someone leave the Freeman house around the same time Tanya made the 911 call. The figure was indistinct in the fading light, but the details were enough to raise suspicions. By morning, what had seemed like a tragic accident had become something far more complicated. Detectives now had a crime scene on their hands, and the Freeman's backyard was at the center of it all. The evidence suggested that Jamal hadn't simply died, he had been attacked. And as investigators dug deeper, they began to uncover secrets that would change everything. What happened in the Freeman backyard that night wasn't just a random act of violence. It was personal. The bruises, the signs of a struggle, the conflicting accounts, all of it pointed to a story that no one wanted to tell. And as the truth began to surface, it would reveal a betrayal so deep, so devastating, that it would leave everyone reeling. Jamal Freeman's death wasn't just a loss for his family. It was the beginning of a case that would unravel the fabric of their lives, exposing secrets that had been buried for far too long. And the closer investigators got to the truth, the more shocking the revelations became. This was no accident. This was something else entirely. The Freeman family was reeling from Jamal's sudden death. Friends and neighbors gathered at their home bringing casseroles and condolences, as Tanya tried to hold herself together for their 2 children. The tragedy had rocked the community, a place where violent crime was rare and families felt safe. But as the days turned into weeks, a different narrative began to emerge, one that would shock even the most seasoned investigators. The initial theory of a medical emergency was swiftly ruled out. The autopsy report confirmed what detectives had already suspected. Jamal Freeman had died from blunt force trauma to the head. It was no accident. Someone had attacked him, and the evidence suggested it had happened in his backyard. Detectives began piecing together the timeline of events leading up to Jamal's death. Tanya told investigators that Jamal had been in good spirits that evening. He'd played with the kids, helped with dinner, and stepped outside to water the plants. But her account raised questions. Why hadn't she heard anything unusual? Why hadn't the children? And why did she wait so long to check on him? The neighbors, however, painted a different picture. Several reported hearing raised voices coming from the Freeman home earlier that evening. One neighbor described it as a heated argument between 2 men, though they couldn't make out what was being said. Another neighbor mentioned seeing someone leave the house around the time Tanya called 911, and a figure, moving quickly, disappearing into the shadows of the quiet street. As detectives dug deeper, they turned their attention to the family itself. Tanya was cooperative, but her demeanor was strained. She seemed genuinely distraught, but there was something in her answers that didn't sit right with investigators. And then there was Keisha Freeman, Jamal's stepmother and his father Marcus's second wife. Keisha's behavior during questioning raised immediate red flags. She appeared nervous, avoided eye contact, and stumbled over her words when asked about her whereabouts that evening. Keisha claimed she had been at home all night, but her story didn't align with what neighbors had reported. One neighbor remembered seeing her car leave the driveway around 8:30 p.m., just an hour before Jamal was found. When detectives confronted her with this detail, she became defensive, insisting the neighbor must have been mistaken. But her unease only deepened their suspicions. The investigation took a significant turn when detectives received the full autopsy report. Jamal's injuries weren't consistent with a single blow. There were multiple impact points, suggesting a struggle. He had fought back. The angle of the injuries indicated that his attacker had likely been someone close to his height or shorter, a detail that ruled out certain suspects but raised new questions about others. Detectives also found something curious in the backyard: a small, bloody handprint on the patio railing. It was too small to belong to Jamal. DNA analysis confirmed it wasn't Tanya's or the children. The match came back to Keisha Freeman. When confronted with this evidence, Keisha broke down, claiming she had gone to the backyard earlier that evening to retrieve a toy one of the kids had left behind. But her explanation didn't account for the blood. Meanwhile, the investigation into Marcus Freeman, Jamal's father, uncovered troubling details. Marcus had been a strong presence in the family, but his relationship with Jamal had grown strained in recent years. Neighbors mentioned overhearing arguments between the two men on several occasions, and one close family friend revealed that Jamal had confided in them about a growing tension with his father. But when asked about the night of Jamal's death, Marcus's answers were vague. He claimed he had been home watching TV, but he couldn't provide an alibi. Then came the discovery that would turn the case on its head. Detectives obtained phone records showing a series of calls and text messages between Marcus and Keisha on the day of Jamal's death. The messages were cryptic, but they hinted at a meeting. One message from Marcus read, "We need to talk before he finds out." Another from Keisha simply said, "It's too late." The messages painted a picture of a secret being kept, a secret so damaging that it could have led to violence. As detectives worked to unravel the nature of Marcus and Keisha's relationship, they uncovered a truth that would shake the Freeman family to its core. Marcus and Keisha weren't just stepfather and stepdaughter-in-law, they were lovers. Their affair had been going on for years, hidden behind the facade of family gatherings and holiday dinners. The affair explained the tension between Marcus and Jamal. It explained the cryptic messages and the inconsistencies in Keisha's and Marcus's stories. But it didn't explain why Jamal had to die, or who had delivered the fatal blows. As the investigation continued, detectives would uncover even more shocking details, leading to a confrontation that no one could have anticipated. The Freeman family's tragedy wasn't just a story of loss. It was a story of betrayal, manipulation, and a desperate attempt to keep secrets buried. But as investigators closed in on the truth, one question remained: how far would someone go to protect their forbidden desires? The answer would leave everyone stunned. The case of Jamal Freeman's murder was already a labyrinth of family secrets and hidden motives. But what investigators uncovered next turned this tragedy into a tale no one could have imagined. Detectives had been combing through phone records, financial statements, and witness accounts when they stumbled upon a discovery that blew the case wide open. A series of text messages exchanged between Marcus Freeman and his daughter-in-law Keisha. The messages weren't just casual or familial, they were intimate, suggestive, and unmistakably those of two people engaged in a forbidden relationship. For months, Marcus and Keisha had been hiding an affair that betrayed not only Jamal but the entire family. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team. This wasn't just a crime of passion, it was a crime rooted in betrayal, secrecy, and desperation. When confronted with the evidence, Keisha broke down. She admitted to the affair but was quick to point fingers at Marcus, claiming he was the mastermind behind the murder. "He said Jamal couldn't find out," she told detectives through tears. "He said it would ruin everything." Keisha insisted that Marcus had been growing increasingly paranoid in the weeks leading up to Jamal's death, convinced that his son had started piecing things together. She painted a picture of a man willing to do anything to keep his secret buried. But detectives weren't entirely convinced by Keisha's account. Her actions on the night of the murder raised serious questions. Why had she lied about her whereabouts? Why had her handprint, marked with Jamal's blood, been found on the patio railing? And why had she exchanged a flurry of texts with Marcus just hours before Jamal was killed? As investigators pressed Keisha, another critical piece of evidence surfaced. A neighbor's security camera had captured grainy footage of Marcus entering Jamal's backyard late that night, just hours before Jamal's lifeless body was discovered. The footage showed Marcus carrying what appeared to be a large, heavy object, one that he was seen leaving without. When detectives confronted Marcus with the footage, his demeanor shifted. The confident, composed man they had interviewed earlier seemed to crumble under the weight of the evidence. At first, he denied everything, claiming he had gone to Jamal's house to talk things out. But when faced with the text messages, the autopsy report, and the mounting inconsistencies in his story, Marcus finally broke. In a shocking confession, Marcus admitted to confronting Jamal that night. He described how their conversation had quickly escalated into a heated argument. Jamal, furious and betrayed, had threatened to expose the affair to the entire family. Marcus claimed he hadn't planned for things to turn violent, but when Jamal stepped toward him, he panicked. In his own words, "I just grabbed the first thing I saw. I didn't mean to." But he wouldn't stop. Marcus revealed that he had struck Jamal with a heavy garden tool, a wrench he had picked up from the patio table. He described how Jamal had fallen to the ground, still conscious, but dazed. "I thought he was going to get back up," Marcus said, his voice trembling in the recorded confession. "So I hit him again." The second blow had been fatal. Marcus admitted to staging the scene to make it look like an accident. He wiped down the wrench, tossed it into a nearby dumpster, and left the backyard as if nothing had happened. He even called Keisha afterward, instructing her to stick to their story and act as though she knew nothing. But Keisha's role in the crime remained unclear. While Marcus insisted she had no direct involvement in the murder, detectives weren't convinced. The text messages between them hinted at more than just complicity. They suggested planning. In one message sent earlier that day, Marcus had written, "It's going to be fine, just trust me." And Keisha's reply, "I can't lose everything." With both Marcus and Keisha now under intense scrutiny, the investigation reached a critical juncture. Detectives were left to untangle a web of lies, half-truths, and shifting blame. Was Keisha a victim of Marcus's manipulation, or had she been a willing participant in a deadly scheme? And could Marcus's confession be trusted, or was he trying to shield Keisha from the consequences of her actions? The twists in the case left even the most seasoned detectives questioning everything they thought they knew. The Freeman family's tragedy wasn't just about a forbidden affair or a moment of rage. It was about the lengths people would go to protect their secrets, even at the cost of a loved one's life. But as the case headed to trial, one thing became clear. The full truth had yet to be revealed. The courtroom would become the stage for the final act of this devastating story, where betrayals would be laid bare, alliances would crumble, and the shocking details of Jamal Freeman's murder would finally come to light, and what happened next would leave everyone speechless. The arrest of Marcus Freeman marked the beginning of the end for a case that had gripped the community and left a family shattered. The man who had once been seen as a pillar of strength, a father who was supposed to guide and protect, now stood accused of the unthinkable, murdering his son in a desperate attempt to shield a forbidden secret. Marcus Freeman was charged with second-degree murder, and the trial that followed was nothing short of explosive. The courtroom became a theater of heartbreak and betrayal as the prosecution laid out their case in painstaking detail. Evidence of the affair between Marcus and Keisha was presented with stark clarity. Text messages, phone records, and testimony from friends and neighbors who had long suspected something wasn't right. For Jamal's wife, Tanya, the trial was a living nightmare. She sat in the gallery, her face a mask of grief and disbelief, as the private details of her husband's murder and her father-in-law's betrayal were aired for all to hear. The affair wasn't just a betrayal of Jamal, it was a betrayal of the entire family, a wound that cut so deep it left scars that may never fade. When Marcus took the stand, his once commanding presence seemed diminished. He spoke of regret, of a moment of rage, that he claimed he would give anything to take back. But his words did little to sway the jury. The evidence was overwhelming, and the confession he had given to detectives sealed his fate. The verdict came swiftly, guilty of second-degree murder. Marcus Freeman was sentenced to 25 years in prison, a shadow of the life he had once known. And then there was Keisha Freeman. Though she was never charged with any crime, her role in the affair and the events leading up to Jamal's death left her a pariah in the eyes of the community. The public scorn was relentless, with whispers following her everywhere she went. Ultimately, Keisha decided to leave Atlanta, hoping to start anew in a place where her past wouldn't follow her. But even as she tried to move forward, the weight of her actions remained, a constant reminder of the family she had helped destroy. For the Freeman family, the resolution of the case brought little solace. Jamal was gone, his life cut short by the very people who should have loved him the most. Tanya, now a widow and a single mother, struggled to rebuild a life for herself and her children. The once close family gatherings, the laughter and joy that had once filled their home, were now just memories of a time that felt impossibly far away. The Freeman family will never be the same. Marcus's actions left a scar on his family, a permanent reminder of the night that changed everything. And while justice was served in the courtroom, the emotional toll on those left behind is a wound that may never truly heal. The story of Jamal Freeman lingers in the mind long after it's told. It's a tale of a family torn apart by betrayal, of a man who lost his life to the very hands that should have protected him, and of the devastating consequences that follow when trust is broken. Jamal's death wasn't just the end of a life, it was the unraveling of a family, a legacy, and a future that will never be fulfilled. This case reminds us that the choices we make, no matter how secret we think they are, have consequences. The truth, no matter how painful, always finds its way to the surface. And when it does, it can leave destruction in its wake. Marcus Freeman's desperate attempt to hide his affair with Keisha came at the ultimate cost, the life of his son. And for what? A secret that couldn't stay hidden forever. Jamal Freeman's story is a stark reminder of the fragility of human relationships and the devastating power of betrayal. It's a cautionary tale that forces us to reflect on our own actions, our own choices, and the impact they have on the people we hold closest. Because in the end, it's the ones we love who bear the weight of our mistakes. But what do you think about this tragic case? Could this have been prevented? Was there a moment, a single decision, that could have changed everything? We want to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, because every perspective sheds new light on a story as complex as this. And if you found this story as gripping as we did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. We bringing you the stories that need to be told, the ones that make us question the world around us and the choices we make. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the tragic story of Jamal Freeman. It's a story that will stay with us, a reminder of the devastating consequences of secrets, lies, and betrayal. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the truth is closer than we think. We'll see you in the next mystery.